Hi everyone. My name is Alicia Pettit, and I will be your instructor this semester for this online course. There are going to be plenty of lecture videos, but I wanted to give you a short video so you guys can get to know me just a little bit. This is going to be a little different from the normal, like in class, where I would get to talk to you and I would get to ask questions from you on that first day to kind of get to know each other. So at least this short video gives you a little idea about who I am, my academic background, a few personal fun things about me. So I do have some notes I'll be following. So if I look off screen, I'm just looking at those. I just don't want to make sure I don't forget anything. So probably the most important part is my academic background, right? So I'm originally from California. I grew up in Northern California, and I know we have a lot of like transplants from California into Vegas, but most of them, not all, of course, but most are from Southern California. So I grew up in Northern California, kind of near the Sacramento area. I actually lived in Sacramento for about maybe like 6 years or so before I moved here. But I kind of lived in that general, Sacramento area for basically my whole life. But I moved to Las Vegas. It's been just a little over 10 years. It's been a decade that I moved here. So how that kind of ties in academically. So when I was living in Sacramento, I went to like community college in that area, and then I got my bachelor's at CSU Sacramento. So I went to the state school, and that if you've ever been to Sacramento in general, especially that campus, it's a very beautiful campus, very beautiful. Well, Sacramento, not anymore, but they used to be, for years it was known as the city of trees, which is like was very true. I think now it's like the like farm to fork capital, or I don't know, something like that. But anyway, it's very green, very beautiful city. But so I had received my bachelor's there. I got it in anthropology. I also stayed there for my master's degree, which was also in anthropology with a focus in like human behavior and like evolutionary psychology. And when I first moved to Las Vegas, it was because of the PhD program. But when I had started at UNLV, that's where I attended, I was focusing on like that same thing I had worked on for my master's, so like human behavior, evolutionary psychology. But very early on, like really within the first semester, I ended up changing my whole kind of trajectory to what I had originally kind of interested me in anthropology, like all those years ago, which was paleo anthropology. So that's actually going to be a topic we cover in this class towards like the end of class, paleo. So if you've ever heard of like, Neanderthals or like the famous fossil Lucy, like we'll be talking about some of that. So that's, the main focus for my PhD, work. A little background, if you guys are curious. Years ago when I took this class that I'm, now teaching to you, I, I had dreams of I'm going to get a master's and a PhD, and I when you have that, I don't know, like when you're young, you have that spirit and energy. So, but I'm doing it, but so if you were in that same, thinking in that same way, there's a lot that goes into it. I'm sure you're aware, but there's so many things I feel. I know I'm not the only one, but just other grad students who you're not realizing like the complexity of the academic system until you're, like in the midst of it. So essentially, most of you are aware, you have to start out with a bachelor's, and you guys, of course, are starting at a community college, which is where I had started, and plenty of people start there. It makes sense. And then you maybe move on to another school to finish your bachelor's. In this case, maybe if you're living in Nevada, Las Vegas, you're going to go to like UNLV or, something like that. So then you do that work. So that took me, let's see, I was in community college for a couple years, because also the first maybe year and a half, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I ended up I have an associate's in fashion design and another associate's in merchandising and business, and then God, years ago, but I was certified in like tailoring. So I had this whole fashion thing I was really into, and I was in a couple fashion shows. Like, I had made clothes and stuff for a few fashion shows at community college. So that was like a great memory. But I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do kind of beyond that. I figured, okay, I think I'm going to end up going maybe to art school somewhere in like the Bay Area, in California. And so I thought, well, I first have to finish this associate's degree, at the community college I was at. And so I had to take a science class with a lab. And I was looking at the list, and I in high school, so, a few years before that, I had always done well in school and I enjoyed science, but at that point I was really focusing more on like art and stuff. But I thought, well, I have to take the science, so I'll pick one that sounds interesting. And I didn't really know what anthropology was. Like I signed up for the class and I didn't really know what it was. I knew that it sounded easier than, yeah, I don't know, like chemistry lab or something. So I ended up taking the class. I didn't really even know what anthropology. I mean, I didn't even like look it up. I just was like, "Well, whatever. And I ended up. It changed my whole life. Like I ended up completely falling in love with the topic. Changed my trajectory. Instead of art school, I went to the local state school. So I stayed at community college like an extra semester to get more of the prereqs. And then, I mean, early on, I knew I wanted to kind of make my way up through a PhD. So I mean, long story short, is basically what I did. So I stayed, or I got my, like I said, I got my bachelor's at CSU Sacramento. I got my master's there as well. Then I moved to Las Vegas to attend UNLV for my PhD, which I have been doing, which I'm at the very end of. This is like the worst part. And also the other thing I was going to say about some of the complexities of academia is even within like a PhD program, there are a lot of steps. So, I mean, you could come with already having a master's and you still have to do coursework. Now, the coursework's a bit different. You're not sitting in a lecture with like, 30 other people, but you're in what we call seminars. So it's you, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 other grad students. And every week you have to read like 2 books and like 10 articles, and you have 3 classes that does the same thing. You're writing like 20-page papers. I mean, some are less, but you know what I mean? It's very intense coursework. And you're not just listening to someone lecture, you are participating every time. Either it's your assigned week and you have to prep like a whole long PowerPoint on like the book everyone read or, so on and so forth. So it's really good for you in academia if you want to go into like teaching and stuff, because it kind of gets you out of that, kind of gets you into like presenting mode. Which I had already been teaching for a few years before I got into the PhD program. So but it's really helpful for a lot of students anyway. So you're still doing like, it depends on your field, but 2 to 3 years of just coursework. Now, during that time, you're also maybe doing a little research project for this or that, you're kind of building up to what you want your ideas to be for your main project, your dissertation project. And so then you do your coursework. So let's say that's like 3 years. Then you have to study for your comprehensive exams. And basically you and your committee and your advisor, you compile a list of, I mean, my list was probably like 200 items long of like books and articles, basically everything that's specific to your kind of sub field, like within anthropology is like our larger field, but within it, which on one of the lectures, I'll get into this, there's 4 subfields. So bio, anthropology, cultural, archaeology, and linguistics. So then you're in a subfield. And then within any of those 4 subfields, you have a subfield, and then even a subfield. So I'm like anthropologist, biological anthropologist, paleoanthropologist, and my hands like going off the camera. And then even within paleo, I focus on like craniofacial morphology. So I don't do like post-crania, I don't do like the legs and the arms or anything like that. I mean, I could at some point, but the focus that what I've been doing, all my research for the last like decade has been on like just this area. Anyway, so you're kind of, honing in on all of that. You're reading, you are trying to become a quasi-expert, at least as much as you can be up until that point. And then you spend about a year to a year and a half just prepping. Maybe you're taking another class, maybe you're doing some like guided reading or something with your advisor, but you're basically just, prepping for these comps. And then everyone is so stressed. I was stressed. And then you take them and you're like, that wasn't so bad. And you tell everyone else who hasn't done it, it's not so bad, but they won't believe you because you didn't believe the other people, who told you. So, but you get through that. And then at that point, you just have your major like project to do. And so before you can even start on your project, you have to write what's called a prospectus. So basically it's like the document of what you want to do in every little like tiny detail, like everything. Now it might change along the way. Plan A goes to plan B, but you have to have it outlined, like, I mean, down to like the dollar, down to like the dates, like, really specific. And that takes forever because it's a very specifically like, the way you set up the document is very specific. It has to be approved through your committee. Like it's a major piece of written work you've done. And then you formally present it to your committee. Like by then they're like, okay, we've approved it, but you have to like formally get in front of them and present it, and they ask questions and whatnot. And so most people spend just writing that prospectus about a year I mean, I've seen people do it less than that, but I took about a year for mine. Most people take about a year. It's very detailed, you know. If you're lucky, maybe you have a summer in there. You have spent a summer kind of, you know, cramming it in. I had done that for mine, but I think I spent like basically a whole summer and then a whole other semester writing it. So my master's thesis, like my finished work, which you can like Google, my master's thesis, I think with everything, all the charts and graphs and stuff, was I think around like 80 pages, maybe give or take 80, 85, something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. My prospectus, just the proposal for my dissertation, not even like what I've actually done, but a little bit of background and like this is what I'm gonna do in every detail, like A to Z, you know, whatever, was about the same length. So that just tells you how much goes into just that document. And but once you kind of get through that part, you've written that document, everyone's approved it, you have this really great like step by minute step guideline to what you have to do next, and then you go on to your project. So at this point, before you even start your dissertation, like data collection, you've already spent 5 years in the program, like, you know, maybe 4.5. Like I've seen some people, depending on like what their subfield is, they spend a little less time, or someone's just like, you know, they have nothing else going on in their life versus someone else maybe has like kids or something. So obviously it's going to take everyone a little bit slight difference in timeline, but it's still going to be like years and years and years. So you could be like, have a master's and 5 years into a PhD program and you're like just starting on your research project. And then after that, then is all the hard, then it's the hard work after that. So then you're spending, I mean, depending on your field, you're spending anywhere from like a semester to like 2 years, 2.5 years doing your data collection. I spent about 2 years ish doing mine because I had to do like travel to collect some of my data, which like if you're a paleoanthropologist, typically you're going to like other like universities, museums, zoos, like whatever your subfield is, you know, and you know, collecting data from other specimens. If you are doing like human behavior, you might have a survey, a written survey, maybe very detailed, but you can disseminate that to like some of the people who live in Las Vegas, and it only takes you like a semester to collect, you know, like 300 surveys or something. So just depending on what your subfield is, kind of will dictate how long that part takes. And then you got to write it all up, right? So that's where I'm at. And I've been at this stage for a little longer than I wanted to be. I mean, that's just life though, you know. So so I'm grinding through, like right now I'm recording this in the summer, like you're not going to see these videos for like quite a few weeks. I'm kind of right in the middle of writing, and like every day I'm like, because I'm also trying to prep for courses that I'm going to be teaching, you know, I'm trying to live like a fun life, my partner, try to actually enjoy the summer, then writing, then you know, have hobbies. So the summer has been not relaxing necessarily. It's been very busy, but it's all coming along. You know, I'm hoping with this fall semester it'll be done. And then I'll graduate in the spring, because I don't think I mean, this is a whole other thing. I mean, you guys might be aware of this a little bit, or you're about to be with like maybe graduating with your associates and stuff, is that the paperwork, you got to do that like a whole semester in advance. It's like, oh, if you want to graduate in May, you got to put in your application and be basically all your forms and shit in like early February, you know. So anyway, so I'm hoping to kind of finalize everything through the fall, and then comes early spring, the paperwork, the you know. So, oh, plus, I mean, I'm just rambling now, but plus the regalia that you wear. So like when you get an associate's versus a bachelor's versus a master's versus a PhD, like your graduation regalia can get quite elaborate. And so for the PhD, usually it's very elaborate and has all these multiple colors depending on where you graduate from. And some, you know, some people buy those because then if they're in academia, like I will be, when you attend other graduations, you wear your regalia, you know. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to rent it, because you can rent it. I'm like, I'd rather buy it. I have it. I'm not just leaving academia. I'm actually going to use it again. But it's like $1,000. That's a lot of money. So I was like, I still maybe need to save a little money, you know, so having a little bit more time, you know, through the spring, I think will be perfect. Anyway, I was just rambling then. So that's kind of just what's going on in my life currently. Let's see what else. Look at my notes. How many of you, I mean, you can't really answer me, but maybe you'll answer to yourself right now. How many of you signed up for this or any of my other classes because you saw my really good ratings on Rate My Professor? I feel like they're very true, right? So most of them say the same thing, like easy but fun. She's a decent grader. Like I'm not too harsh on the students. I'm not super easy. I try to be fair. I feel like I feel like I try to be, I think I'm very approachable, and most of the students would say as much. I try to make learning fun and interesting. I don't take myself too seriously, although, like, the work is there. I mean, you have to complete the work, and ideally you're learning a lot of really cool, fun stuff about science. So, yeah, so if the ratings I feel like are pretty accurate. I'm just looking at, actually, I have a couple off screen right now, seeing if there's any new ones. I don't think so. But I think maybe that I've noticed. I think I've had in the last maybe like 5 or 6 years one review that was really strange. It wasn't really negative. Oh, I'm trying to remember what they said. It was something that I remember didn't make sense to me at the time, but it was something like I talked about my political beliefs, but anyone who knows me knows I don't talk about that stuff. I mean, most professors don't. I mean, I guess it depends on your field. Like, I'm teaching a science, like I'm teaching like a factually objective course. We're not getting into like necessarily getting into a lot of that other personal stuff. Now, in the cultural course, which I teach sometimes, in that class we kind of, as a class, discussions might be had, but yeah, anyway, going on a tangent. Anyway, yeah, so most of the reviews have been positive, and I feel like they're fair. Let's see what else. Oh, doppelgangers. This is always a fun topic. So I get told a lot that I look like, oh God, what's the actress's name? Mia Goth. Am I saying that right? I didn't know who she was, but my niece, she's a bit older, she's in her early 20s, and this is like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, was like, do you know who this actress is? And I was like, I don't know who that is. And she's like, you look just like her. And she showed me a picture, and I was like, whoa. And then I watched like a clip from like one of her movies, and I was like, oh my God, like, it's a trip. Like, even when I look at her, I see myself. So also, like, I'm a natural brunette, I'm not a natural blonde. And so when I've seen her as a blonde and as a brunette, and it's just so weird. Like, we have the same kind of nose, and we have the same kind of like toothy smile, and we even sound similar a little bit. Anyway, kind of weird. And usually I'll ask the students, like, do you have a doppelganger? And so I get some interesting answers. But when I was younger, especially because I had a lot of different hair colors, but I had red hair when I was younger for a time, like in my 20s, I used to get Molly Ringwald a lot. Yeah, that's fun. But I mean, they're both very beautiful, so I mean, it's not like they're saying, "Oh, you look like this ugly person" or something. Let's see what else on my list. Oh, actually, real quick, I forgot to mention this a minute ago when I was talking about the academic-y stuff, is that the titles that you kind of get along the way. So interestingly, in this country, we don't have a title for when you have a master's degree. Like, once you get a PhD or like an MD, whatever, you're a doctor. You have a doctorate in XYZ topic. But we don't have a title for masters, which a lot of other countries do. So that's kind of weird that we don't. Um, you know. But also along the PhD program, though, so at first you're just a PhD student or a graduate student. It's kind of the general term, right? But once you make it to the part that I was talking about before, where you have done your prospectus work and you've formally presented it to your committee and they've approved it, so the only thing left you have to do is the actual like data collection and writing. You're at that point, once you get approved by your committee, you're what's called a PhD candidate. So basically, it's saying you're at the level now of, you're not just a student we have in the program, but you're at candidacy level of, you are about to, if we approve it, get your PhD within the next year, 2, 3, something like that. So maybe longer with me. Yeah, so like there's a lot of terminology that goes into it. So like technically I'm a PhD candidate, and you might be thinking, oh, who cares? But the titles matter. And there's also something we say, like an abbreviation. We say, like, I would say I'm PhD ABD, and ABD means all but dissertation. So anyone who's asking, if they're like, oh, you're a PhD student, I would say, oh, I'm a candidate. So they know, oh, she's almost done. So if I was like at a job interview, they'd be like, oh, she's like wrapping it up, or she's in her last semester or something. And ABD, all but dissertation, they know, okay, you're at the very end. You've done the coursework, you've done the comprehensive exams, you've done the prospectus work, you're at the end, essentially. So sometimes the terms do matter if you're like in an academic setting. If I said, oh, I'm a PhD candidate to some random person, they're not really gonna know or care, but but the words do matter. Terminology matters. I've worked everywhere in this city. So before I moved here, when I lived in California, I worked at the community college, a couple actually out there. And when I moved here, I've worked at multiple locations. So I've taught at UNLV. I taught at the anthropology biological lab. I taught that for a year and a half or so, and maybe a little longer than that, maybe like 2 years. But I kind of did it here or there in the summer. Like I was really more working at CSN, and so obviously you guys know I work at CSN. I've been working there forever. I've taught at every campus we have. I I don't, I maybe early on I had a favorite, but honestly, I don't really care. The last semester, or I'm sorry, the last year or two, I've been at the main campus. But I mean, a couple years ago, I had like 2 years straight at the Henderson campus. Like it doesn't really, matter to me. So I've been at all of them. Um, I also have taught at the UNLV School of Medicine. That was the old name. Now it's called the Kerkorian School of Medicine. I taught there under both names. If you're on like the I-15 and you're coming like south from like you're getting, what I'm trying to say, like right on Charleston, you'll see it. It's on like the west side of the freeway, and it's right by the freeway. And this building, and it just says Kerkorian on the side. And now you can see it's like lit up. That's like the med school. So I taught there for a couple years, and then at the other location for a few years too. Basically, I helped run the Intro to Anatomy course. And then briefly, I taught at the UNLV School of Dental Medicine, also in their like Intro to Anatomy, course. Interestingly, the dental students have way crazier workload than the medical students. The prereqs for getting into, at least here, the prereqs for getting into dental school are insanely more than the prereqs for medical school. It's like, I mean, there's some, right? But it's way more extensive for the dental school. They get way more crammed in every semester at the dental school than the med school students do. And what else? Oh, the content. At least I've only helped run a couple of the intro courses, like the first year students. But even at that level, the medical students, it's like, oh, introductory course, what you would expect. I mean, it's a little challenging, but at the dental school, it's insane. It's crazy. Even just their introductory courses, it's crazy. So I've taught multiple, places around town. I'm actually working through CSN only, but I'm actually just started working through the prison program at CSN. So I'm actually teaching up at the women's prison. I've been doing that for a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years. So up at the women's prison, we have off of the 15 off Lamb. I think that's the off ramp. So if you've ever been up there, you might have seen it. It's called Florence McClure Women's Correctional Facility. So I teach up there. And then also we have like the women's camp in Jean, which actually they don't have it anymore, but they did like as of just a few months ago. So I taught there a little bit too. So I should be teaching at the men's prison. They were maybe going to start that in the fall, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I'm recording this in the summer, but I haven't really heard anything, so it might not be until the spring. But they're like in the midst of like getting it kind of going, And I mean, if you care, but this is interesting, is that with the class that I started teaching at the women's prison, because I'm teaching the anthropology lecture and the anthropology lab, and we have actually a really cool lab set up there, that this is the first time we have been able to offer the women there the chance to get in a full associate's degree. Like they had other programs for them to get certified in like HVAC or cosmetology. There's a few other things, like I think some kind of cooking degree. They had a few options, but now they can actually get a full associate. So pretty cool that I was kind of helpful in that. So we spent a lot of time like kind of designing the course, and because there's so many more rules you have to kind of adhere to in the prison than you would have to like just in the regular campus, so that was kind of a whole thing. But so I teach there too. So it's, I mean, teaching in general is rewarding, but teaching up there has been a really kind of different and interesting experience. Let's see what else on my list. I'll just mention some of the traveling I've done. This is one of the cool things about academia is the travel. Like if you decide to participate, well, if you want to go in anything past a bachelor's, it's kind of expected of you as a graduate student. So I had this craving for like cherry Coke the other day. It's really good. Well, I keep getting those ads. It's like on whatever I'm on, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I got like one ad for cherry Coke, and I didn't even say anything out loud, but I kept thinking, oh, that sounds really good. And then I just kept getting the same ads. I'm like, okay, well, I have to go buy it now. But I got the off-brand to save myself some money. Anyway, so traveling, so academia. when you are in most, I would say most master's programs and most PhD programs, it is expected of you that you will be doing, along with all your major coursework and your main project and all that, you're doing these smaller projects along the way that maybe take you like a half a semester or a semester. You make a poster about it, you present it at a, conference. So like as an example, if my main dissertation data set is, 200 specimens, I might try to get a collection of like 20 specimens and kind of ask some kind of general questions that I think I might be kind of refining later for my main project. So it's kind of in service of your larger project later that you can say, actually, along the way, I did, these three small side projects, and although they were small with a small sample size, they're all kind of showing this general trend, which I've now refined my ideas to then have my formal hypotheses to be blah, 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 so typically you're doing traveling now. It could be drivable distance, it could be flyable, it could be another country. It just kind of depends on your field and which conferences are kind of recommended for you, or the ones that also the ones you want to go to, the ones you can afford. Like no one's expecting you to go to every conference, like because they know grad students most of the time are usually very poor, because they also encourage you not to work, or they'll give you like a teaching job in the program, but it's minimal. So when I first started at UNLV, I had like, that was my position. Basically, you get a tuition waiver for like a certain percentage off your tuition. It's pretty decent. And then you get to teach like one class, and they'll give you, it's not a lot, but they'll give you like a little bit of a stipend. And they're assuming you're taking out a bunch of student loans, but that'll help a little bit, and so you can just focus clearly on your academic pursuits. But I mean, this is the real world, and most people don't do that. Most grad students I know have like two jobs at least, uh so but the traveling, so I mean, I've traveled nothing I'm well, for conferences I've traveled to some like major cities, like I'm blanking now, Cleveland, Austin, New Orleans, Reno, which I'm in the same state, but that one, it's always fun to kind of go up there. Phoenix, the Phoenix area, like Tempe. There are more. Why am I totally blanking? Did we just fly to? Denver. I just went to one in Denver a few months ago. That was so much fun. There are more. I don't know why I'm blanking. Like Southern California, but also I got the opportunity 5 years ago. God, it's crazy to think it was 5 years ago. I actually got to go to Ethiopia. I mean, that's a kind of a whole story in itself, and I'm already at like almost a half hour. So I'll just kind of say briefly, basically our paleoanthropology lab, we as like a lab and like through the, our advisors work, was able to basically gift a 3D scanner and a 3D print, like the 3D printers, the ones that are giant ones, we gifted it to the National Museum in Ethiopia. So myself and my another PhD student, we traveled there and we spent about 10 or 12 days working at the museum and basically teaching the museum employees there how to scan, how to print, um, basically to one. So I mean, as a gift, they could use that for teaching purposes, because the museum is like this massive museum. In fact, that's where the famous fossil Lucy is at the National Museum in Ethiopia. But also to kind of facilitate more like networking and stuff. And then like COVID happened like right after that, and none of us in our lab have been back. But anyway, that's, like I said, it's a whole story. Maybe at some point I'll mention it again. I think the rest of my couple notes are just that I was just going to mention some of my hobbies and some of my favorite kind of TV shows and movies. So, I mean, that's a whole topic too. We could all talk about our favorite shows and movies, and like the time I get, usually my partner and I, we actually have this Excel spreadsheet. Um, like it's like a queue, and he picks a show, then I pick a show, then he picks a show, then I pick a show, and we basically binge that show. And so we're on my pick right now, and I've been waiting. I'm so excited. I'm showing him the show Outlander. So I don't know if any of you have seen this show, and I didn't get into it early on. I got into it much later. I had no idea. I had an impression of what the show was, and I was kind of wrong. So if you're like, oh, I've heard of that show, I thought it was like this romance show, you're like, there is a little bit of romance, but that's really not the main part. I mean, it's part of the show. But I didn't realize, and this is what pulled me in at least to watch the first episode, and then I got hooked, was that one, it's the female is the main character, the strong female lead, she's the Outlander, and there's time travel. And I didn't know that. And so I got like sucked into this show. It's really good. I started reading the books like when I have time, but I'm making my way through the first one. It's like 700 pages. I think I'm at like 400 pages. So, we've been binging that show. I'm with my partner, so this is like my fourth time watching the series, but he's kind of watching it for the first time, so it's pretty cool. So we kind of go back and forth like that. I mean, I could just talk about all my favorite shows, but I'll say like actually, yes, I'll say my favorite show of all time, and I doubt anything ever could top this, is the show The OA on Netflix. And if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This has an incredible fan base. People like this is just such a good show. And I know everyone says that about their favorite show, but it is something very different than probably anything you've ever seen before. And it's such a shame that the series got cut short. So, I mean, if you decide to watch it, know that kind of going into it. It was supposed to originally, they had this whole plan for like the arc of the show was going to be a few seasons, and they kind of cut it short, which is very frustrating. But the show it's excellent. I really don't want to give anything away, but I usually offer this to my students. If you watch just the first episode, you can get some extra credit points. So watch the first episode and then watch more if you want, I'll be surprised if you don't get hooked in. But watch the first episode. It's, I don't know, like 45 minutes, something like that, an hour, I don't know. And write, like, I don't even care, something brief, like one page double spaced, whatever. A general summary, just so I know you actually watched it. This is super casual, like, just so I know you watched it, and then also give me a couple sentences on, like, what you thought. And I'll give you a few extra credit points. That's how important I feel like the show is, that people need to see the show. It's so good. It's very good. Once again, I could just ramble on, but okay. Let me see what else is on my list. I got a lot of stuff. I don't really need to talk about all that. Let's see. I crochet. I love to crochet. I've been crocheting for almost 40 years. I've been crocheting since I was very young. And my grandma taught me, years ago. And so every Christmas, at least 2 or 3 people in my life get a blanket or something. I'm definitely one of those types of people. I'm sure some of you are this way, where even when you're relaxing, you can't really like relax. So I'm always like, I have to be doing something. So I'm like crocheting, so I do that. And then puzzles. I am obsessed with puzzles. I'm super into puzzles. You can't see any behind me now. I'm in like the office upstairs, but I'll record another video and I'll probably be downstairs in my living room where you can see I have a lot of them framed. And like, I don't frame all of the puzzles I do, but I frame a lot of them. And so our whole house looks like an art gallery, which is like framed puzzles. It's very cool. But recently, this is the craziest thing. So you guys have, even if you don't do puzzles, puzzles exist in like 300 pieces, 500 pieces, 1,000, maybe even 2,000 for a larger one. Well, a few months ago, my partner got this giant Amazon box like delivered. And he was all excited about it, And I was like, what's that? And I'm like thinking it's something for him, like he's rebuilding this truck. And I'm like, oh, is it a part for your truck? And he's like, no, it's for you. And he's just all excited. He opens it up, and inside the Amazon box is almost the same size box. It is the most giant puzzle I have ever seen. It has 18,000 pieces. 18,000 pieces. This puzzle, when fully put together, will be 9 feet by 6 feet. So I'm 5'10", so it'll be taller than me and like 1.5 like times my length. So luckily, this box is huge. Luckily, the box comes in quadrants, like upper left, lower right. So right now, I'm my first quadrant, which covers almost an entire. We have a really large dining room table. It covers almost the entire dining room table. Each quadrant is 3 by 4.5. It's huge, and so I've been working on that. It took me like two full days, like not full days, but you know what I mean, 2 days to just sort the puzzle pieces, like into like, it's this beautiful like jungle scene, and it's like giraffes and zebras and whatever, so I had to sort them all. Anyway, that's an endeavor. It's crazy. Luckily we have this one wall where we think we might be able to fit. Anyway, so I'm always doing puzzles. I always have a puzzle going, so when I have time, but I make time. You gotta make time for the things you love, even when you're, I mean, I'm doing it. You guys probably, your guys are doing it where you're like, I'm going to class, I'm doing this. I also I also have a job, maybe another job. Maybe I have other responsibilities as family, friends, a kid. Well, whatever it is, you still got to make time for yourself. Even if it's something you do like a half hour a day, reading or crocheting or whatever it is, the thing that you like to do, baking, whatever. You have to make time for that. That was one of the best pieces of advice that I got. It seems so simple, but it's so easy to forget. But one of the best pieces of advice when I first started my PhD program, because most students get really overwhelmed. It's a lot, that one of the professors was like, whatever it is, you need to take 1 day a week, and that's your day. You don't do any work. You don't do any grading. you do whatever you want to do. You sleep in, you drink mimosas, whatever. You go shopping, you paint your nail, whatever it is. Like, and don't let anything kind of come into that day unless it's like an emergency. But that's like your day to do your thing only. Because especially, I mean, a lot of jobs are like this. You take your job home with you a lot, and academia is definitely one of those jobs. So it just a little, food for thought. But I will say the last thing I kind of want to share is something a little more personal, and I bring it up for a few reasons. One, it's important, I think, to talk about, especially like to be an advocate for, like for yourself. I think knowledge is really powerful in general, but also because I was really unaware of a lot of this until it happened to me. And I'm also I'm kind of an open book with a lot of stuff. So, and this is what this is. In 2017, when I had been here for about a little over a year, like a year and a half, I'd moved here. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I had no family history of any cancer, no family history of any type of cancer. I was in my mid 30s. I was young-ish, for cancer with no family history. I I was fairly healthy, with a fairly healthy diet, and I found a lump one day. I mean, a lot of us as women were kind of told early on, like, do your self breast exam. And thank God I did. Thank God I've been doing that, for since I was young. Because no family history. I mean, that's the other thing too, is so many more women now with all different types of reproductive cancers. They're on the rise. Like, it's not even just women in their 50s anymore. It's like women in their 30s, 20s. Like a lot of the women I met during when I was going through active treatment, they were mostly around my age, like maybe a couple years older than maybe 10 years older than me, but most of them weren't like significantly older, and a few were younger. So yeah, so, I basically found a lump, went to the doctor. She was like, well, with no family history, let's just kind of wait and see. We waited, and maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 months, I went back and I'm like, it's bigger. And so she got me right in right away for a mammogram. It came back, suspicious. And then I went in for a biopsy, which confirmed it. And I feel very fortunate because this is not always the case with people. And I just got lucky that um, the people I had on my medical team were just excellent. And I had medical insurance through the school as a grad student. So once you are a grad student, with a couple of exceptions, if you're like a full-time grad student, they kind of opt you into like the medical insurance. So you pay it, within your tuition, but it's like, luckily I had that. And so the school kind of organized all of my, like, my oncologist, my surgeon, all before they even told me what was going on. Like, they had it all ready for me to go when I first came in, and they told me what was going on. They had all my appointments basically set up for me, and excellent doctors. So I feel very fortunate that it was a very kind of like easy in navigating that part of it. At least the treatment itself was horrific. And if you yourself have gone through this, or someone else in your life who has gone through it, it is something that is difficult to articulate and explain to people how horrible it is. Sometimes getting through it is almost worse, yeah, so I mean, if I had a little more time, I'd probably ramble on a bit, but I'm always an open book about any of that. I've had students over the years say, oh, my friend just found a lump, but she's young. I'm like, you cannot even depend on that anymore. You have to go in. You cannot assume it's going to be just a cyst or something. I mean, hopefully it is, that's what I thought until the very moment I heard it wasn't. So just be an advocate for yourself, take your health seriously, especially as women. We're often, always kind of taking care of everyone else. I mean, it's not solely something women do, but in our society tends to be a little more that way. And we kind of tend to forget about ourselves, in that. So, just don't do that. Yeah, but I got through the treatment. I've been in remission 7 years. So it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, I have some um, permanent side effects from the treatment. So even though I'm in videos, you're not really going to see me, in and out of class. But even on a video, you might see me sometimes with my hand or arm in either like a brace or a sling. Basically, the cancer had gone into my arm, and they had to remove parts of it. And some days the pain is low. I feel fairly functional. Some days I can't feel half of my arm. It's some nerve damage. So if you're ever curious, like, oh, what's wrong with her arm? It's just a bad day, And if you ever see me on campus and I have my cane, which I do sometimes, it's because also I have some nerve damage in my feet from the medicine. So, which is It can happen to people. It's a little more rare of a side effect. Of course, I got that one, you know. So it's just a day by day thing. I mean, anyone with chronic pain or any kind of chronic disease, which there are plenty of us, you know, and you take it a day at a time. And so, like I said, I'm open book about a lot of that. If you, as a student, ever have a question or a comment, or you just want to talk, I'm totally here for you for that. I know exactly what it's like, and I was very fortunate in my life that I had a couple of, actually within academia, some really amazing people I could turn to for help. So I'd love to be that for someone else. So, but I think after 40 minutes, I was like, this is going to be a quick video. Uh, if you stuck around for the whole thing, then I mean, that's kind of it. I think I had a couple other things on my list, but I've already talked for a while. So this is kind of the introductions video. If we were in class, I would have asked you all a few questions about yourself. You didn't really get the chance to, that's fine. I'm sure throughout the semester in some of these videos, I'll kind of, ask you guys the question, whether you actually can answer it is, not the same, but you know what I mean. So, I mean, that's basically it. And make sure to watch the video on like the syllabus, because that's going to be coming soon. And that's going to go over like the class stuff, like Canvas and whatnot. So, make sure you watch that video right after this, if you can, obviously. And I would say, like, for the first week of class, like, if you do nothing else, make sure like you've watched this video and then you watch that next one about like the syllabus review and the course content, because that's gonna give you a good guide at exactly what you're seeing, like when you log into Canvas, exactly what everything is set up to do. It should be pretty self-explanatory, but you never know. So definitely watch that other video. But otherwise, if you have any questions for me, reach out. I'm assuming you've at least looked at the syllabus, but if you haven't, it says it on the very front that I prefer getting messages through Canvas. I will message you back if you send me an email to my CSN email, but it has to be from your CSN email. It can't be from like your Yahoo or your Gmail. If you message me through my official CSN email, it has to be through your official CSN email. That's the only kind of caveat there. But Canvas messaging, if you're logged into Canvas, you can just send me a quick message. It's really easy in that. So anyway. I'll see you guys on the next video.